Hello,
Hello.
welcome. Hello, it's me, Martin, and it's Daz. Say hi, Daz.
Hi, Daz.
I knew you were going to do that. Oh dear, we
Oh,
are going deeper. Well, this evening, our time, if you're watching live, if you're not watching live, then welcome, one and all. It's lovely to have you with us. And if you are watching live, you get the opportunity to ask some questions and make some comments. Just pop them in the comments below, and we will hopefully spot them and respond to them. And if you're watching after the fact, then feel free to put your comments in, and we might still reply to them, but in typed form. So, yeah, how you doing, Daz?
okay. I managed this morning to get through the sermon without coughing, but I may not be able to do the same thing this evening. So I might mute in and out, but I'm okay. I'm just a bit full of cold. In fact, I probably sound like I got my late night radio voice on. Very bassy and nice, smooth, hopefully. But
Can I just say I loved your sermon this morning?
I really had a good time doing it actually. For the first time ever, I did it, and then everybody came after me and said, "Oh, it really made me think. It really did this." And I thought, I'm so pleased that it landed with people how I hoped it would. It was really buzzing after.
Because we had some great illustrations. We had the eternal rope, never-ending rope.
That wasn't mine. I stole that from someone else.
And I love how organized you are. You had poker chips that you were asking for this morning before I went to church. That's how organized you were for this morning's sermon.
I had, although just in my, it was a bit last minute, but in my defense, I had someone else lined up, but I just couldn't get hold of them today. So then I had to find somebody else, and that was hard going, man. But I got them in the end, and it was worth it. I'm glad I found them.
And when you were arrived at church, I said, "Why did you ask a bunch of Christian leaders whether they had poker chips?" Well, the least likely group to have any, but you got some in the end, so that's good. It was a really good illustration. So I really love it. Guys, if you haven't, if you missed Daz's sermon this morning, where he was talking about where is this all going and about life after death, then I really recommend you catch up on it on our YouTube channel because it was really good. Just a few shout outs to a few people. Welcome Daniel, welcome Anna. Welcome, Ian and Michelle. It's great to have you with us this evening. And if you are watching and you haven't said hi yet, please just say hi in the chat.
Yeah, we can see you. We can see all your little comments coming up. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm the only one that can reply typing to the comments, but we can both reply verbally. So, and please do ask questions because otherwise we're just gonna waffle for the next half hour or so, aren't we, Daz?
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's the plan.
Or lack thereof, maybe.
Yes. The topic or the question that we're looking at this evening is why are Christians so weird? And it's a provocative question, isn't it, Daz? It's one of these ones just to get people to tune in to think a little bit. And it's interesting, Daz. You were just saying to me that you told a friend that this is what you were talking about, and she's not a Christian. And how does she respond?
Well, see, I was saying, I'm trying to explain. Sometimes I have to explain what I do to people, and I say, "Well, today I'm going to live stream to the world, and we're going to talk about why Christians are so weird, and what do you think make Christians weird?" And she was like, "Oh, I don't." She just didn't like the phrase at all. She's like, "I don't think Christians are weird. Like that seems a bit mean." I think was her. And I said, "Well, we're trying to be a little bit sort of provocative, I guess. I don't think I said that, but that's the right word." And I was saying, but you must there must be quite different to you, because you're, would you say? She said, "I'm not." I would say I'm maybe agnostic atheist, probably. But I think she thought about it and she said, I think there are some Christians who I would say are. She wouldn't say weird. She didn't like that at all. But she talked about, she said there's people in America who will go to a soldier's funeral and protest at a funeral, or the people who are outside abortion clinics and really she said, I find them a bit weird, a bit much. It's the people who seem to try and convert everybody, regardless of how they, whether or not they want to sort of hear about it. And I think that maybe she said that maybe they could be a bit weird. Yeah. But she said, there are people like you, just talking about me, seem quite normal. And I was thinking, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I'll take it as she intended. I think she was being kind, trying to be nice to me. I did think I'm supposed to be a little bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, do you think a bit of it is? I mean, they say we live in a post-Christian country, but we are still heavily influenced by biblical morality. Bible stories are maybe they're definitely less familiar than they once were, but there are still a good amount of people that kind of understand uh, the Bible a little bit, and we're all kind of Christianish. You know, compare us to maybe China or Japan or some of these very culturally different countries. I guess Christians just seem a bit run of the mill.
I think there's definitely. I don't think anybody would argue that Christianity, or specifically the Old and New Testament, the Bible, sort of are the foundational texts on which like much of our Western philosophy, morality, our legal system is sort of founded on. The simple ideas that Jesus said, like treat everybody the way you'd like to be treated, or the idea that everybody has value, just inherently because you're a person you have value, I think is a biblical idea, and I don't think that's necessarily true everywhere in the world. People don't just accept that as a truth. I think we do in this country because of what was those foundational that are foundational for us, but for everybody at one point they was very foundational texts. So we're probably less weird to people who are Western.
Yes, yeah. Why don't you guys who are watching put yes or no? Do you think Christians are weird? Yes or no? You can pop it in the comments.
You can have some fun with it. Some Christians are super weird.
Yes.
Some but is it are they weird because they're Christian, or they're weird because I've met some Christians and I think maybe you just they just lack a bit of social skills, or
that's a tricky one. I mean, if I explain where this comes from, this might be helpful and maybe guide our conversation a bit, because we've just done a teaching series, 4-part teaching series over the month of February on the world's greatest story, and we're looking at what's the story that the Bible tells us about humanity, about creation, about the world. And I have to admit, and this confused you a bit this morning, Dad, didn't it? Because we changed the title last minute, literally like 2 days before the series was about to start, because it was going to be called The World's Greatest Conspiracy. But actually, conspiracy is such a negative term. It talks about being legal activities and stuff like that. I didn't really want to.
There's a lot of baggage with that word.
Yeah, a lot of baggage with that word, which I didn't want to suggest that Christianity was a conspiracy by any means. But what drew me and what caused me to create this particular series was that I've listened to a few podcasts and stuff about conspiracy theories. QAnon being a recent one. Have you heard of QAnon, Daz?
No, I don't know that one.
No, so QAnon was one that kind of rose with Donald Trump. He really kind of played on that a little bit, and it's this idea that there's this international conspiracy, dark, secrets and hidden agendas. And I thought, it's very easy to laugh off these conspiracy theories. The world being flat is one such conspiracy theory, that all the scientists are conspiring to make us think the world is round when actually it's as flat as a pancake. And we can laugh these things off and think you're a bit weird, you're a bit crazy, but actually, when I thought about it, the things that we believe as Christians is pretty weird. The fact that another being, a spiritual being, has created the world that we live in, that we can have that spiritual being living inside us if we're a follower of him. The idea that there's dark forces, there's good, there's evil, there's demons, there's angels, there's all these weird stuff that we believe that there is something spiritual stuff working in the background. I'm thinking that actually us Christians should perhaps come across more weird than we actually are, because we believe some pretty weird things. Or do we? Do you think we believe weird things, or do a lot of people kind of try and push that one under the carpet and forget about it?
I think it depends who you ask, doesn't it? But I think my imagination would tell me that we are a bit weird, but that's kind of to be expected when, you know, something I do like prayer is so basic for me. Like, that's just what I do. I believe that there's a God and I can talk to him and he will listen and he'll care about what I say. Whereas my friend might think like, that's weird. Like,
Yeah.
To them, it might be like that you talking to, it's like my 6-year-old who talks to an imaginary friend or something. They could equate it to that kind of thing. And they might think that I don't understand that. That's weird.
Yeah.
So I think we are, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It can generate interesting conversations with our friends. I think if we're willing to be a bit weird.
Yeah.
Which is
and that's a good question. Are we willing to be weird? I wonder whether in our churches and in our faith we try and minimize the weird and try and make us as normal as possible. And I think particularly when we're crafting services, which both of us do, we can sometimes think, okay, in order to be, they used to use the word seeker sensitive, but basically it was creating a church service environment that would be palatable to unchurched people. And it's very easy to try and remove anything from that seems a little bit weird, a little bit off, a little bit too, we could talk it charismatic, if you know the use of the words. Charismatic means gifts of the Holy Spirit. And that might, I mean, here's a question for you, Daz. When did you first come across in Christian circles some charismatic gifts? And both of those might be speaking in tongues, people falling on the floor, people laughing out loud, stuff that would come across as that. No, that is weird. When was the first time you maybe came across that?
So I went before I would say I became a Christian. I started going to, my sisters always went to church when I was a kid, and they used to go to this little church in Portsmouth, and it was just an independent evangelical church, which means it wasn't like a Baptist or a Church of England or anything like that. It was just a little church that was kind of doing its own thing.
Doing its own thing.
Yeah. And I remember going along to these services, and people they were really like fantastic Christians. They really cared about people. They really loved Jesus and did their best. But then now and then they'd be like singing away, and people would put their hands up, and I was like, oh, that's, you know, they're really into this. That's cool. And then some people would be like talking in different languages, and I assumed that it was like, I don't know,
some Spaniards.
I could probably recognize, like actual human languages is what I was thinking. Oh, this is quite cool. It's very multicultural. And then like later on, I found out that there's this idea that you could speak in tongues of angels, and they were speaking in tongues. And I didn't really realize. I just thought that they were muttering away to themselves in their own language.
Yeah,
that's probably my first experience, and so I didn't really. It was just like, oh, that's something I don't understand.
Yeah,
but I just said that's just the thing they do. And people fall. I remember people rarely it would happen, but now and then people would like fall down on the ground, and I used to think in my head, oh, they just got themselves so worked up, they just needed just to sort of, they haven't collapsed. Yeah, I didn't understand what the spirit was, but they just got so overwhelmed, they just needed to lie down. It's probably what I was thinking. Well, that's a bit weird, but I kind of, there maybe is an explanation I could come up with that sort of made it understandable in my own head. But I think it was before I became a Christian, I would see stuff like that and just think, there's weird stuff going on here. But I don't think, well, it wasn't so weird that it stopped me wanting to go. It was something intriguing about it. There was something in the wind. And I think I'm quite a naturally curious person. Yeah. And I probably thought, what's going on here? This is really fascinating. Because a lot of going to church initially for me was just to explore what a few key members of my family had, this faith they had. And I was like, this is, you know, my granddad died of leukemia. It was awful, but he clung on to this faith he had. I remember thinking there must be something worth exploring here if you wouldn't sort of renounce it all. So yeah, I think before as a Christian, I saw some weird stuff that was probably supernatural. I didn't really realize what it was, but that was my first experience.
Yeah, because I think church in itself, remove all the weird stuff, is a good thing. It's about, it counters loneliness, it creates community. It's a proven to help people live longer, just because you your life shortens from loneliness and stuff like that. So actually, church is good. So much so, the atheists have come up with, or the humanists have come up with their own humanist churches, and they have liturgy, they have songs, they have stuff lit up front. So I'm guessing it's very, very similar to church
without God.
Yeah, just without God.
Which I'd be sort of fascinated to see what that's like. Like, what do they sing? Like, for example, like what?
Yeah, I mean, the latest.
Yeah,
I don't know, Pink song. I don't know what
it's probably all very upbeat, isn't it? It must be like.
I think it's all very positive thinking and stuff like that, and appreciation of creation and life, celebrating life. I think that's how it goes. And I wonder if there's a danger of us as churches becoming like that.
Yeah,
That
maybe.
we can celebrate life. We can enjoy being in each other's company, creating community, maybe doing good stuff. It can be, but actually remove a lot of the stuff that maybe we might think is a bit weird, which tends to be stuff of the Holy Spirit, and we can shy away from that. What do you think, Daz?
I think there is a temptation to do what I've heard some people talk about, like a social gospel, which is very like good works oriented. Let's just be kind. Like that's the main. As long as we're being kind and we're representing Jesus as like a kind savior who loves everybody, and I think that there is a temptation to only do that. Maybe that's what I would be concerned about, because I think that's a big part of who Jesus is. I don't think it's wrong, but I think if we can be easily tempted to take out the weird bits because they're a bit weird or they're hard to explain, or I think sometimes I think that people will be put off, or they just won't go for. If I do something a bit weird, they'll never ever speak to me again, or they'll just run away and they'll, I think that maybe there's a fear in our minds in sort of the weirdness. Or if I'm a bit weird, I'll put people off, and they'll never come to know Jesus if we're a bit too weird.
Yeah.
And I'm only really reflecting now, having just told you my experience. Like that's not necessarily true. Like it wasn't true for me. I saw weird stuff. It didn't put me off. I was intrigued by the fact that people like cared deeply about other people, and it didn't matter if they were like their family or they were just total strangers. I remember seeing a guy who was leading the service just stop one day because a guy burst out in tears at the front of the church. He was, he looked like maybe he's homeless or really struggling with mental health. Just burst into tears, and the guy just walked off sort of the pulpit, or was the pulpit, and just went and sat next to him. And everybody else in the service was sort of like, what do we do now? But the amount of care he showed was enough to sort of, I could overlook the weird stuff because I was so intrigued by the amount of love he had. So I think that if we are tempted to get rid of the weird stuff, we should bear in mind we could probably not do that and do the really loving and caring stuff that God calls us to do, and not be scared to be weird and loving and caring, because
that and is important.
Yeah, I think that's
because we could go all weird quite happily, and then actually we lose all the attractiveness, which is the loving people, caring for people. And let's just quickly see what some people have said. Michelle says, I don't think weird, but sometimes you really want to avoid when you see them shouting in the street. Avoidable rather than weird. I definitely agree with that one. I remember growing up in Ipswich town centre, there was a guy that every weekend he would be preaching the gospel, and I found it embarrassing. Although, great that he was out there doing that. That's what he felt led to do, but certainly trying to avoid rather than thinking they were weird. And then Jen, my lovely wife, says, what can set us apart as weird is maybe being salt and light.
Yeah, that's it.
In the world. Can you explain what that means, Daz?
So Jesus talked about this idea of us, followers of Jesus, being the salt and the light of the world. And so we are. Oh, that's fine. I think the salt's a tricky one, because salt, for us, it's like makes it everything flavorful. But I think they also had like a preservative quality.
And
I think
antiseptic,
there's so much to it, and I think that's we don't just do kind things; we also preserve and heal. Like we're all a representation of Jesus, who does preserve and heal our relationships with God and that kind of thing. And light again is just is if you light a match in a dark room and it just brings gets rid of shadow and darkness and bad, and that is again the purpose of Jesus' church. The people who carry a message is to spread hope and in the darkness. I guess that'd be my explanation.
That's good. That's good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're just called to be different. We're called to be distinctive. I think countercultural is a good phrase. And interesting what you were saying this morning, Daz, about do we look at our life through the perspective that actually our life is eternal, and we don't have to be so invested in this current life because we have something even better to come, and that's incredibly countercultural.
I think so, especially for anybody that's not we live in a culture that I would say is quite atheistic, more so than there's lots of people of faith and we have a commonality with them, but if someone has no faith, then to talk about help them understand a life that it goes on forever is really hard, and they just can't understand that, or they won't they cannot think the same way, and it's easy to get to sort of or maybe because we live in that culture, we don't think about it hardly ever. It's so easy to lose perspective that I don't. It's not. I talked about YOLO, didn't I? You only live once, and I think no, that's not true. Or if it is true, the life I have is goes on forever. It's not like life is short on the earth, but that's not all of life. There's more to it than that, and that is countercultural because everybody else who doesn't follow Jesus, or it thinks that this is all we've got. This is it. It's going to be hard to explain to them why we make the decisions we do. We think, well, that's because we don't think this is it.
Yeah, because our faith and our values should affect how we live our lives, how we spend our money, what we spend it on. And I think it's so easy to fall into that. And I'm speaking from experience here, into all the same values and the same wants and desires of everyone else. The clothes we wear. I mean, how many people invest so much money into their houses? It's we're a DIY nation. We love our homes and we invest a whole lot of money into them. And as followers of Jesus, is that what we're called to do? We should be living a very different life to people around us. Weird. We chose weird because it's provocative, but it's not necessarily weird. It's different. It's set apart. It's going against the flow. It's all those sort of phrases that should be both a bit weird, but also a bit attractive as well.
I think I think so. And I had a little skim of the bit in, is it like 1 Peter or something, when it talks about the church being a holy people. And then I looked in the I think it was the King James version. It said about being a peculiar people, and I was like, yeah, that's like weird, isn't it? Peculiar. Well, I think, but then the NIV translated that to like God's holy people, and that idea of holiness is about being like set apart, isn't it, or different or other? Like, and that's, if we're going to be holy people, that doesn't necessarily mean we're like super righteous, really good. Everybody, like, you could never do anything wrong. It's about being different, and like people will look and think they're different, but they're not necessarily like, they're different, but like, I've never met anybody like you. I don't understand the way you think. That's really interesting. Hopefully it will be because I think that's why Jesus was. He would just talk, and even people that thought they knew stuff about God would be like, this is different. This is other. I don't understand. I've never heard this before. It's
good old David Mack says, weird is a difficult term to define. Forgiveness and kindness to people who have wronged you can be seen as weird. Christianity may not just be a bit weird, but rather a lot weird in some cases. Yeah, that's what we're saying, isn't it? I mean, weird is that's our fault for choosing that.
I'm glad we did.
Are supposed to be very different because we believe very different things and we have very different values that should be driving how we live our lives and how we react to people. I mean, Jesus says, don't just love your friends, but love your enemies. Because if you love your friends, you're just like anyone else. But if you love your enemies, that's what makes you different. And that's weird. That's strange. That's illogical. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense to forgive people and to be kind to everyone, regardless. Well, that should set us apart. Yeah.
We should be weird.
We should be weird. Yeah, we should be different. Yeah. And we were talking about, gifts of the Spirit and stuff like that. It's not just about that. You don't have to be falling on the floor to be different. You need to be kind and loving and forgiving and use your money in different ways. And rather than grappling for power and stuff like that, they say money, sex, and power, isn't it, are the three main things. And actually, Christianity is supposed to view those three things incredibly differently to the world around us. And we've got to ask ourselves the question, is that really the case? And I guess we've seen some of the moral failings in the church in recent years. Hillsong, Willow Creek, well, the leaders anyway, not the church as a whole. And it suddenly makes the church seem just like any other rather seedy organizations.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're there. Well, I was going to say maybe we are weird, but that's not what I meant. Maybe we need to be weirder. We need to up the weirdness game and try and be holy, like in the true sense. Maybe. Yeah, that's hard. It's a hard thing. That's hard because you got to stick your head above the parapet a little bit, haven't you, and be willing to be weird.
Yeah,
which is not easy to do.
Yeah. Here's one. Weird has a negative connotation in modern parlance, a bit like conspiracy, which we changed. That word might be distinctive. Yeah, so that's definitely what we've been talking about there. Yeah, just being distinctive. So can you think of any practical ways in which we can maybe, if we're a follower of Jesus, start being a bit distinctive tomorrow?
I was nearly asked another question in my sermon today about whether or not we really want to know like God's will for our life. Because Paul started all of his letters like Paul, an apostle of Christ, by the will of Paul, an apostle by the will of Christ Jesus, something like that. And I remember thinking, am I like Daz Jones, children family pastor by the will of Christ? And it really is. I think I am, but if I knew exactly, would I want to know exactly what God's will for my life is of every single minute of every single day? I think I'm not sure. But you could ask yourself that question. Maybe that's a practical thing, and that's probably what I'm getting at. I don't know if I'd want to, but could we sit down and think about a day and just kind of invite God to tell us, what do you want me to do today? Where do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Who do you want me to spend time with? How do you want me to conduct my conversations? What's on my? I write my to-do list. Are you happy with my to-do list, God?
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they were talking about the fact that don't ask what is God's will for your life, because that's a bit egocentric, and and we're all a bit selfish and self-focused, to be perfectly honest. Instead, ask what is God's will, and then ask how can I be a part of that? How can I help facilitate that? Lord God, what do you want me to? Like you said, Daz, what do you want me to do today? What choices do you want me to make? Guide my decisions, not because you've got some great plan for me, because it's all about me, but actually, God, you have a plan for the universe. You are working in the lives of people around us. How can I help facilitate that? How can I be a builder of your kingdom rather than my own? And I think that's a really important thing to do. And
it's challenging though, because that makes it sound like I'm not very significant, Martin. I don't think I like that. I like that.
I'm the most significant person. It's all about me. The world revolves around me, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And we can
in
very
my
easily
world.
say that in our language, can't we? You know, God has
Yeah.
a purpose for your life. God has a, you know, we do believe that we have a God that knows us intimately and wants what's best to us. But I can so easily slide into this feeling that actually it's all about me, and God has something for me to be the best I can possibly be, and I've got to really search for that. And actually, the world does that as well. You know, I'm going to go on X Factor or whatever because I feel like I'm not the person I should be, and there's something better for me out there. When actually, as followers of Jesus, we shouldn't be focusing on ourselves. We should be focusing on what God is doing and get involved in that. Sheila says, "My daily prayer to God is always help me fulfill your purpose today." Now, I love that.
So good, Sheila.
Yeah, that Sheila, that is great. Help me to fulfill your purpose, not mine. Help me to fulfill your purpose today.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah, that's great.
We should get Sheila on next time.
That's a great idea. Yes. Yeah, Sheila, what do you fancy talking about? Just let us know because we haven't quite decided what we're doing for our next Going Deeper. Because I don't think I'm going to be here for that one, but we'll try and do something possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. So no, thank you, Sheila. That's really, really good. We're going to start wrapping up now because it's less exciting when there's only two of us rather than three.
I won't take that personally.
Oh, Sheila said. Oh, Sheila said.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Oh, what she let herself in for? Okay.
She sounds less than keen. We'll have a chat about it, and
yeah, we'll have a chat about that one. Right. But no, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Daz, for this morning, which was amazing. And thank you for the conversation this evening as well. And yeah, we just recommend watch back over this series. There are two bonus episodes that weren't Sunday sermons. One is me chatting to a guy called Jason, who's the leader of a church in London, and he's talking about spiritual realms and spiritual beings, which is really interesting and exciting. And then I had a conversation with two Baptist ministers, both called Simon, about the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, which talks about end times and where we're going. That's a pretty weird book. We can use the word weird for the Revelation. And I just give some tips at the end of the video about how to approach the book of Revelation, because I read it this January. I've been avoiding it because it's too weird. And I read it this January and it's been great. And I recommend you guys read it as well. So yeah, you can find both of those videos on our YouTube channel.
Enjoy.
Oh, my wife is very kind. Says you are both doing very well.
Oh, thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. That's lovely. We're starting a new series in March, looking at different biblical images of God, which I think is going to be really interesting. And I'm preaching on next Sunday on God being a potter.
Ooh.
So yeah. I haven't worked out what I'm doing yet, so I've got a week to plan it, but should be an interesting one.
Yeah,
not
a potterer. He doesn't potter about.
Not a potter. He's not an old man going around in his shed in the garden. No, that's not the image the Bible gives of God.
Just checking.
So yeah, we're doing that next Sunday. So yeah,
sounds interesting.
Have a great rest of your evening, Daz. Thank you so much.
You too. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and do do subscribe and to our channel, and do share the video, because you never know, if you share it on social media, someone might actually watch it, and that's the whole point of us doing this. So thanks guys, enjoy the rest of your evening, and God bless.
Bye.